Hey everyone, it's time to put on your big boy britches or your big girl panties and engage your brain. We need to talk. I'm Xavier Lamont, and this is the Conversation Starter. Welcome to my new video blog, The Conversation Starter. I've decided to record a series of short messages in the hope of starting and facilitating some constructive dialogue between serious, intelligent people because our country, frankly, is desperately ill. It's not hyperbole to say that we are facing circumstances that threaten to tear this nation apart. At this point in time, the United States is anything but united, and we need to heal. We need to come together. Collectively, we need to realize and accept that we are stronger standing together than we are standing apart. It's not magic. The beginning of our healing is going to start with people who are willing to make an effort to have real conversations and focus on what unites us rather than what divides us. That, of course, especially in these days, is something that's easier said than done. We are dealing with a world that is in crisis. Our country is in chaos. We're only halfway through 2020, and we're trying to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, an economy that is breaking down. We've got high points of political strife and animosity, the right versus the left, the red versus the blue, the haves versus the have-nots. We're facing another apex of racial conflict. And frankly, a lot of people have no idea why. The media has an agenda, left, right, or otherwise. And it doesn't matter whether you consider yourself, or the other guy, frankly, a liberal or a conservative. In the media that leans one way or the other, opinions are presented as facts. Lies are being presented as truth. Truth is being dismissed as lies. And we're dealing also with a scorched earth policy between sides that's become the norm. It's my way or the highway. And because of all this, empathy and compassion are portrayed, at least, as being in short supply. People have learned to vilify anyone who doesn't believe what they believe. But while they may have influence, I'm talking about the news media and the social influencers and the talking heads, I don't believe they control everything. I believe that there are people who are capable of more, than those people give us credit for. Now, I'm no guru. I don't have answers. The Conversation Starter isn't here to hand you solutions or tell you what to think. I'm simply here to try and provide information to give scope and context and then ask some questions. The real issues that are before us aren't binary issues. They aren't black and white. It's not a simple matter of right or wrong, regardless of how these things are being portrayed. And they're being portrayed as such. I'm going to tell you up front, just so that you know, I'm a political independent. I have been for decades. I don't care what party you identify with. I believe a good idea is a good idea and a bad idea is a bad idea. I believe that stupidity and ignorance are pervasive throughout our Congress, unfortunately. All that means is that I am equally adept at pissing off people on both sides of our country's political spectrum. And I'm not only adept at it, it's something that I usually do. So this goes hand in hand with my belief that most people don't bother to think for themselves, and they really don't have, much desire to do so. Thinking people understand, that a Facebook rant, even a violent protest, a vilification, demonization, hate speech, shaming, or a bumper sticker, none of those things ever changed anyone's mind about anything. We all tend to gravitate, towards our predispositions. And unless we're willing to engage our brains in dialogue and in reason, we don't tend to change our opinions. We just seek out others who have the same opinion that we do. That's what being an echo chamber, that's what that is all about. And we don't do that until we begin to experience, something different. Now, it seems to me that there was a time when we could talk to one another, when, you could visit with your neighbor and talk about what's going on and observe the world and add your 2 cents. And people, didn't have to agree. They knew they didn't have to agree, but they also weren't afraid of each other's differences for the most part. There are always exceptions. But you knew where you stood, and you knew where your neighbor stood. And, having talked to him or her, you still might have thought that person was an idiot, but, he might be crazy, but he was entitled to his opinion. I don't believe that we should all have to agree on any given subject in order to move forward or make progress. Okay, there is such a thing as compromise, and it's not necessarily a dirty word. I was taught that we all had the right to speak our minds and say what we have to say. Now, I may not agree with you, but I'll defend your right to say it. And I expect you to do the same for me. The problem with that is that right to say, it assumes that you're a thinking individual. And it assumes that you've given some thought to what you believe and what you stand for. And unfortunately, that right has been seriously abused because there are a lot of people who don't and have never bothered to think for themselves. And that situation has been exploited by people and by organizations who believe that they have the right to tell others what to think, okay? Or they insist on that right. And unfortunately, they do it very successfully. Masses of people across political, social, economic, and racial lines and spectrums these people are, as my mother would have said, they're running off at the mouth and raising their fists in anger, and it's all based on something that someone else told them. They can't be bothered, and in many cases it's never even occurred to them, to check something out, to dig into the facts of a situation, figure out what is fact and what is opinion, and what it means for their lives and for themselves personally, because not everything affects everybody the same way. But apparently, that type of thinking is just too much work. Sooner or later, there's going to be a high price to be paid, for such a lack of thinking. Our country right now is made up of haves and have-nots, but I believe a shift is coming. In the not too distant future, the line of delineation will be between the critical thinkers who will have and the non-thinkers who will make up the have-nots. And the thinkers and the problem solvers will be at the table, and the non-thinkers will be begging for scraps. So anyway, this blog is for thinkers. The conversation starter is my attempt to open dialogue between thinkers, regardless of where they stand or how they align themselves, politically or socially. America has never been perfect, but that doesn't mean we should ever stop aspiring to be. The wounds we currently suffer from can and will be healed by intelligent people who are talking, to each other. And I was just thinking, not just talking to each other, but they're going to come from all over. And as I said before, I'm not telling anyone what to think. I'm just trying to provide, some information and context for discussion. And with a little luck, just maybe we can help bridge a gap or shorten the chasm between people and viewpoints. So in the weeks ahead, I will be addressing from a thinker's perspective some of the problems that we are currently facing as a society. And that includes, defining racism, prejudice, and bias. We need to understand what we're talking about when we use those words. I'll be examining, policing and what that means. Looking at systemic injustice, the law and the Constitution, the crisis in the American healthcare system, Wall Street versus Main Street, and of course, the pandemic's effect on society, our economy, and even our education system. So I'll be looking at those things and more. My goal, again, is simply to provide perspective, and I hope that you'll find something of value here, something to think about. And if that sounds good, then I invite you to tune in, as they used to say, or follow me on social media. I don't know where this will be posted yet, but it'll definitely be out there. That's all for now. Until next time, this is the Conversation Starter. Thanks for watching.